I had lived on my property for nearly 20 years, and one thing had always stood out: the massive oak tree in my front yard. It wasn't just any tree. It was over 100 years old, towering, wide, and strong, with branches that stretched out like protective arms. My grandfather planted it when he was a boy, and it had survived storms, droughts, and time itself. It was the centerpiece of my home, the kind of tree you could build a swing on and know it would outlast generations. So when Karen from the HOA started making snide remarks about it, I knew trouble was coming. "That tree is unsightly," she said one afternoon, hands on her hips as she stared at it like it had personally offended her. "It drops leaves into the community gutter, and the HOA board has decided it violates landscaping uniformity." I nearly laughed in her face. "Karen, that tree is older than this neighborhood. It's not going anywhere." She pursed her lips. "Then we'll have to take action. You've been warned." I shrugged it off. Karen was always issuing threats she couldn't back up. But then came that night. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by the sound of chainsaws. At first, I thought it was a dream, but when I looked out my window, my heart stopped. There she was, Karen, with two men from the HOA, cutting into the trunk of my 100-year-old oak under cover of darkness. They had flashlights strapped to their heads, mufflers on their saws, and an arrogance that made my blood boil. I ran outside in my pajamas, shouting, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen smirked. "HOA business. You refused compliance. We're removing the hazard." "A hazard?" I screamed. "That tree has stood for a century without hurting anyone. You're trespassing." But it was too late. Within minutes, the final cut was made, and the massive oak groaned, cracked, and fell with an earth-shaking crash. My yard looked like a war zone, and I felt like someone had just destroyed part of my family history. Karen dusted off her hands smugly. "Problem solved. You'll thank us later." She had no idea what she'd just done. The next morning, I contacted the county arborist and filed a police report. That tree wasn't just old, it was officially registered as a protected heritage tree. Cutting it down without permission wasn't just vandalism, it was a felony. Within days, investigators were crawling over my property, taking photos, measuring the stump, and collecting statements. My cameras had captured Karen and her cronies sneaking in with saws, which I gladly handed over to the police on a neat little USB stick. When the officers knocked on Karen's door, she tried to play innocent. "This is harassment. We were just doing community maintenance." But the evidence was overwhelming. Her smug confidence evaporated when she was read her rights on her own front lawn in front of gawking neighbors. The fallout was brutal. She was charged with felony destruction of protected property, trespassing, and criminal mischief. The other two HOA board members were slapped with charges too. The HOA tried to distance itself, claiming Karen acted alone, but the emails I provided from her to the board, boasting about solving the tree problem, proved otherwise. At trial, the judge didn't hold back. Karen sobbed as the charges were read, realizing the penalties included thousands in fines, probation, and even potential jail time. She'd thought cutting down my oak would make her look powerful. Instead, it made her a criminal. And as for me, the court awarded damages, enough to re-landscape my entire property and then some. I couldn't replace my grandfather's tree, but I planted 3 new saplings in its honor. Every time I sit on my porch now, I look at those young trees and smile. They'll grow tall and strong, just like the oak that came before them. And they'll serve as a living reminder of the day Karen's arrogance finally caught up with her. Because in the end, it wasn't just a tree she cut down. It was her own reputation, her control over the HOA, and any shred of power she thought she had. All for the price of a chainsaw at midnight.